Hi, this is Crystal Cyrus from the OOTW podcast, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 293, 48 Hours Movie Review. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. This week, we're taking a trip back to 1982. We're going to be reviewing Eddie Murphy's feature film debut, 48 Hours. But before we get to our movie this week, Derek, what is new in the world of pop culture, my friend?
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
I had a chance to watch a couple of movies this week. None of them really that new. Like nothing brand new, but, I had a few things that I had downloaded onto my phone and thought it'd be a good time to watch them. So the first thing I watched was a film on Netflix called The Baker. And again, it's like sort of a B movie that just came up. It's one of these ones where it's like, hey, you like these other movies. We think you might like this one. And it stars,
when did it come out? I'm not familiar with it.
I don't know, like in the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, okay. That's why I don't know.
Yeah, and it stars Ron Perlman.
Okay, yeah.
Some people know as Hellboy. Some people know as the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. He was in Sons of Anarchy. I mean, he's pretty reasonable, and I like him. So that was part of the reason it came up. So this movie was okay. It was he basically plays like a retired something you don't know at first, and he's like an older retired guy, and his son, who's a screw up, witnesses a drug deal gone bad in the first 5 minutes of the movie. And the son sees an opportunity to take the drugs after the drug deal goes bad, and he does. And then, of course, when the son tries to sell the drugs, he gets killed. Well, the dad is Ron Perlman, who is the baker, and he basically goes to get revenge and kick ass. And if that sounds interesting, then you're going to love it, because it's just a lot of, that kind of violence. It's sort of like the Jason Statham movies I've described recently. It's that sort of same script, that same playbook where it's just, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Here's this guy who was clearly military who comes out of retirement to extract revenge, and it's like, yep, if you like them, there's another one added to the list. It's on Netflix called The Baker. Then I watched again, and then I think it was on Amazon, and I think it was Amazon. I was watching through, and it was like, here are things you might like based on your recent viewing things. And they recommended a movie to me called The Upside, starring Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. And it's from, I think, 2017, 2018. So like it's new-ish. And the premise of this one is Bryan Cranston plays a paraplegic, and he is trying to hire a new, I don't know, nurse, we'll call it. It's not what they call it in the movie, but like a caregiver. And Kevin Hart's character sort of shows up, wrong place, wrong time. He's there for a job interview, but he goes to the wrong place. And then when he realizes this is what he's there for, he's like, no, this isn't what I'm here for. But his sort of nonchalant attitude and his witty banter impress Bryan Cranston's character. And so, of course, he hires him. And that's the first 5 minutes of the movie. And then you have this 2 hours of these two, these two guys who don't get along, but do get along, but they learn from each other. And there's, of course, the message. And what I didn't know until after was it's loosely based on a true story. And this is actually the second time this story has been turned into a movie. It was originally done as a French film almost 10 years ago. And the guy who plays the nurse in the French version of the movie is the actor who plays Lupin in the recent Netflix series Lupin. And so I really like that guy. So I'm like, oh man, I kind of wish I would have gone back and watched the French film. But in any case, it's pretty good all around. If you like Cranston and you like Hart, you get some reasonably good performances from them. It's also got Nicole Kidman in a supporting role. She's not in it that much, but she is in it. It's your typical sort of feel-good movie. Like, obviously, they wouldn't have made it into a movie twice if it didn't have sort of the feel-good the good feels to it. So,
question:
it's not bad.
Is it a
Yeah.
drama? Is it a comedy? Because Kevin Hart usually does
it's a drama.
work.
Again, it's sort of loosely based on true story, so it's a drama. And Kevin Hart's character is he has moments to be funny, but it's not a comedy. Not like, I wouldn't call it that at all. It's Kevin Hart toned down, which is good, because I'm not a huge fan of his like over the top comedic movies. Like, I don't mind his stand up, but anyway, neither here nor there. And then finally, I had a chance to watch a documentary.
Oh, nice.
For 40 days and 40 nights, he watches documentaries. He likes to learn about the world. It's Derek's Documentaries. Derek's Documentaries.
Please do share.
So this one came out last year, but I only had a chance to watch it this week. It was on my Crave HBO feed, and it's the Ray Parker Jr. documentary called Who You Gonna Call? And
Sounds pretty good.
I honestly didn't know much about Ray Parker Jr.
Right.
Obviously, Ghostbusters.
Yep.
I mean, I was 10 years old when Ghostbusters came out. Excuse me. And then I've since, because I listened to the 80s channel on my Sirius radio feed, I've listened to like countdowns from 1980, 81, 82, 83, 84. And so you have occasionally some other songs by Ray Parker Jr. show up prior to his Ghostbusters success. And he was with a band called Radio, spelled R-A-Y. Obviously, his name's Ray, Radio. And so I knew a couple of songs, but I had no idea how prolific his career had been up until Ghostbusters, how successful he was, how well respected he was by so many artists, and how many writing credits he has over the years on so many songs by so many artists. Like, you just think, oh, Ray Parker Jr., that's the Ghostbusters guy. If that's all you know about Ray Parker Jr., you have to go and watch this documentary. It's amazing. Like, his life, he lived such a full life, and he had this talent, and he just had these opportunities. Like, he worked with Stevie Wonder for years and wrote songs for Stevie Wonder. Like, come on, who does that? Like, that's awesome. And no, it was really good. I kind of was disappointed that I didn't watch it when it first came out a year ago, and that it took me this long to revisit it. But no, it was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Did it also touch base on when he got sued by Huey Lewis?
Not at all. Not at all. That's what my wife said. She watched it when it first came out. She's like, yeah, did you notice they just sort of glossed over that? And I said, well, now that I've watched this documentary, I don't necessarily think that he plagiarized I Want a New Drug. Again, I don't know the full story, but based on his career and his history and how many songs he has written over his life, I think it was probably just a coincidence of the music. But obviously there was a payout was made, right? It's all confidential. Nobody.
He did admit to the fact that they would listen to that song a lot when they were just kind of brainstorming and stuff, and then maybe it just kind of seeped in somehow. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe, again, from the way they portrayed it on the documentary, I don't believe that there would have been any malicious intent.
No,
like, hey, I'm going to steal this song. You know,
I don't think there was
either. It's not like what's that Saturday Night Live sketch with Eddie Murphy where he claims to be the fifth Beatle, Clarence? He's like, listen, let's steal all Clarence's good ideas. He's like, no, I don't think for a second that Ray Parker Jr. was pulling a Clarence and having all his songs stolen. But anyway, no, it was good. If you have the ability to watch this one, it was pretty good, especially if you like music documentaries.
Nice. Okay, so I got something for you. I've mentioned this before. One good thing to come out of the pandemic was that, at the time there was like not a lot of movies were getting made in Hollywood. So the local theaters would show old movies, on their roster of what they were showing that week. And they've continued to do this. At least they have in my city. I don't know if they do it in yours or not, Derek, but in my city, there seems to be like some new movies that are out, and then there's always one classic movie that they show on the big screen every week. And I mentioned before, I took my son last year. We went to see Jaws. It was fantastic. Not that long ago, we went to see 2001: A Space Odyssey, which my son still to this day says, what the hell did I watch? Which is great, because that's kind of the idea of the movie. But the one that we went to see this week, because this Thursday is 80 years since D-Day, we went to see Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, man. In the theater. Nice.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It came out in 1998, as you know. I never saw it on the big screen when it came out.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I saw it on DVD. But so I went with him to see it, and we were driving there, and I'm like, okay, so like, what do you know about D-Day? I'm kind of doing a little bit of a pre-assessment with him. Like, what do you know? How, all this sort of thing. And then, like I said to him, I said, just so you know, your grandfather was on that beach. And he's like, oh my God, really? I was like, yeah. And he's like, did he survive? I'm like, you're looking at me, aren't you? He's like, yeah, I guess so. I never really thought of that. Well, he's like, maybe some people had babies before they went to the war. No. My dad was a baby boomer. It's all good. So anyway, so I wanted to figure out like what his frame of reference was for this movie, because I felt it was important that he saw it, and I wanted to see it on the big screen. And so we went to see this. Oh my God, like what an absolutely visceral experience in a movie theater, especially that opening scene on D-Day.
Oh yeah.
Like it's such a visceral experience. And then and this film hit a little different for me this time, because like I say, I saw it, way back in the day on DVD. But I think there was just maybe because I'm a father now and stuff. I don't know. At the end of the film, when he turns to his wife and he's like, please tell me I'm a good man. Tell me I've led a good life. Tell me I deserve this. He was speaking because, they saved him. So, he had to make sure he earned it, Right. But he was speaking for a generation of people too. And it's also, it hits home on a personal level, because I think, just as a father, as a man, like I want to look back and think, like, tell me I've lived a good life. Like, because they gave this gift to us. Like I was saying to my son that day, December the 6th, like it changed the course of history. Like it completely changed the course of history. We don't know what the world would be like if that never happened. So like just so many things were going on. It was fantastic. And even my son was like, man, that movie was good. And he's even said that the last couple of days, because we went to see it last weekend. He's like, man, I can't believe how good that movie was. So at least it was good. So it kind of hit home. So anyway,
you kind of look back and go, how did Shakespeare in Love get the Oscar for Best Picture over
ridiculous.
That?
Just ridiculous. I mean, I understand, because the Oscars always do that. The Academy does that. They give these weird movies like Chariots of Fire wins, all that kind of stuff, and Shakespeare in Love. No, Saving Private Ryan is just it's just an unbelievable piece of filmmaking. Like even when I watch that opening scene, and even the other scenes when they're defending the bridge at the end, how the hell did they film this? And then to be able to film all the logistics that goes into the scenes, but then also like how they infuse it with so much suspense, and like when that tank is going to turn down that alley and come down toward them, and like it's just so suspenseful, and it's terrifying. And the thing I think the takeaway was for me too was watching it, like, man, those guys were so brave. Like to think, 1 minute you're a school teacher in Minnesota, and the next you're like on the beaches of Normandy, and you're having to run and like up the, it's the bravery. It's just mind-boggling to me. Like just unbelievable. Different generation. We talk here with a podcast, for the generation, that totally different generation of people, I think. I don't know. Just mind-boggling. I'm really, really glad I went to see that one. That was good. I want to continue this as an ongoing thing. I want to keep going back to movie theater and watching all these old movies. So I don't know. Maybe they'll bring back.
I like that you think 1998 is old.
Yeah. For me, that is a big thing. Well, they consider them to be old movies, so I'm just buying into that concept.
That's fair. Okay.
That's all it is. All right. I also got this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, how do you know that the man that invented the Ferris wheel and the man that invented the merry-go-round never met in person?
This almost sounds like a math problem. Mm-hmm. I have no idea.
Because they traveled in different circles. Get it?
Yeah, I do.
One thing I've always appreciated about you is your sense of humor.
We got a bleeder! 36, does that include me?
Because if you've seen one, you've seen them all.
You know, man, I gotta take one more turn around the horn here.
Can fart jokes.
Fine, be in the.
Why? Hey, try to just yourself your way through the parking lot.
Join the club.
What day did the Lord create Spinal Tap, and why couldn't he rest on that day too?
All right, my friend, it was over to me this week, so I got to pick a movie, and I went with 48 Hours from 1982, going way back. That's my idea of an old movie, you know, a good one. So you had not seen this recently, had you? I had watched this movie not that long ago with my wife. I remember it was like a couple of months back. Watched it again this week for the podcast. But what about you, Derek? Have you seen it, you know, at all since, it came out or whatever?
So this is one of those movies that originally I didn't see until many years later. So as I mentioned earlier, like when this came out in 1982, I would have been 8 years old. So clearly I wasn't going to the theater to see this movie.
It was rated R.
But as we got later into the 80s and Eddie Murphy really popped, like I remember seeing things like Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, but on home video. Like my parents would rent the videos for me. They were like, we don't mind some swears, but we don't want movies with excessive, sexual content. Like, we're like, okay, that's fair. So my mom didn't have an issue letting us watch Beverly Hills Cop. But this is one that just, I guess, sort of never really hit my radar when I was younger and sort of into Eddie Murphy and watching all his movies. And I probably didn't see this for the first time until, I'm going to guess, the late 90s, probably when I was working at Blockbuster Video. That was probably when I saw it for the first time. And I just remember at the time thinking it was okay. I guess because in my mind it had been built up. Everyone's like, oh my God, well, if you've seen Eddie Murphy in Trading Places and Beverly Hills Cop, like you're going to love him in 48 Hours. I was like, oh, okay. And at the time I just remember sort of thinking it was just okay. And then I probably didn't watch it again for 20-ish years. Like, again, because I sort of remembered not loving it, I didn't make a point of rewatching it. But then I do remember it was on one of my my streaming channels here on the 80s channel, I think, like maybe a year ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, like since the pandemic. And I thought, I should give it another watch. And I know I watched it, but I don't have any memory of it, which to me was sort of like, I must not have loved it so much. So I was a little skeptical going into it this week because I know you have really enjoy. I think that you really like this movie, and
yes.
And I know you've spoken about it before, and so I went into it again this week, and yeah, I sort of just felt the same way. Like to me, it was just sort of a movie. Like there were certainly funny parts, and there were certainly parts that stood out, but not in my mind. It wasn't enough to say like this is a fantastic movie. This is a hilarious comedy. But I can understand and appreciate what it was in the time because I think part of the reason that I didn't immediately love this was because I saw all the movies that came after this that were influenced by this or that were copying this.
Yes.
And so going back to see the original after you've seen all these other ones, the original maybe didn't pop as much for me. And I think that's unfortunate for me that I was never able to experience this without all that other baggage. And I think when I watched it this week, that really sort of struck me as I was going through it.
And that's fair because we've talked about that on this podcast before, how, I'm always pushing these old movies that kind of set the tone and started a trend. And this one definitely did. This basically started this whole genre of the cop buddy film. I mean, you could argue Freebie and the Bean from 74 kind of started it, but this one really launched it into the stratosphere. You would not have Lethal Weapon or movies like The Bad Boys and stuff like that. It wasn't for this movie, but again, if you've seen all those movies since, you go back and watch this, maybe, you have a different perspective.
I like that and I read that online in a few places where they said this sort of was the launch of the modern buddy cop movie, where it's like, but in all fairness, like Eddie Murphy doesn't play a cop and they're not buddies. So it's funny that they refer to it as the quote buddy cop genre. But again, it has some of the beats. You usually have a white guy and a black guy. You usually have one guy who dresses nice and one guy who dresses like crap. You usually have one guy who's like book smart and another guy who's streetwise. So like all of the formula is here, and you can see how all you got to do is put it in a blender and mix it up a little bit, and then what comes out is you get 4 Lethal Weapon movies that you would probably never have had with that composition had this not hit in 82 the way it did.
Mm-hmm. My relationship with it was a bit different. I didn't see it in the movie theater when it came out either. I was 12, but I saw it relatively soon after, I think I used to tell you, when I go to my grandparents' cottage, they had like a laser disc player. This was before, even right around the same time or just before VHS really took off. They had, but this one was called a Spectravision. And it had like, it was you can Google this stuff. It had like a big plastic sort of case that the movie came in, and you popped it in the thing and you popped it out. And so there was a local place that rented movies for Spectravision that you could, for these machines. And so we would go down and get them. I remember I got 48 Hours once, and I watched it at night. You know, kind of when my grandparents went to bed because they wouldn't want me watching an R-rated movie. And so I really liked it. But I want to ask you a question, because is this a comedy or is it a drama? What do you think?
No, I think I would definitely call this a drama with funny parts.
Yeah,
I mean, you got Eddie Murphy in it, and I think that's why the movie probably worked so well in the moment. Was you came out of the 70s where, like, movies from the 70s had a certain tone and a certain pacing, and they were, for the most, especially the dramas and the actions, were very serious. And I think that what this does really well is it sort of leans on that, because your movie-going audience has just had 10 years of that kind of movie, so they have certain expectations of what cop movie should be like, and I think this delivers on that. But then you overlay that with Eddie Murphy and his comedic timing and his sensibility and how he acts, how he performs, how he brings humor to a scene, and I think that just works so well. So I think it definitely, I would classify this as a drama first, with funny parts, or like, but I would definitely not call this a comedy. And
was that part of your, one of the expectations that you had going into it, thinking it was more of a comedy, and then kind of going, hey, this isn't all that funny? There's a couple funny lines in it, but overall it's sort of a gritty cop movie, right? Yeah, well, I think that might have been my original take on it as well. Like, I was expecting it to be ha funny, because I'm used to Trading Places, and again, like Beverly Hills Cop is sort of the same. It's like a drama / action with funny parts, but Beverly Hills Cop doesn't take itself nearly as seriously. Like, it has a lot more humor in it. Yes. Whereas this one, I would put capital D drama, whereas Beverly Hills Cop is more of I would call it like a comedy drama. Like, it's probably equal parts both. But again, it's many years later, and you're like, okay, well, what did fans like about this? They liked Eddie Murphy. Okay, give him more to do. Let him cook. Okay, so let's dig into this a bit. It was directed by Walter Hill, and I wanted to nominate this because we just did his other film, Brewster's Millions, a couple weeks ago. It was written by Roger Spotswood, Walter Hill, Larry Gross, and Stephen D'Souza. Released on December the 8th, 1982, so at the end of the year that year. Had a budget of $12 million, but grossed over $78 million. But because it was released so late in 1982, it didn't really chart well that year. So 1982, I always ask this, any guess as to what the top grossing film was that year? Sorry, for 82 or 83? In 1982. This one was like head and shoulders above everything else. What year was Raiders of the Lost Ark? That was, or not Raiders, sorry. Jedi. What year was Jedi? Jedi came out the next year in 83. Okay, and Raiders of the Lost Ark came out the year before in 81. Okay. But I will say that Raiders of the Lost Ark was still making so much money that it finished number 2 in 1982. Wow. It was still making so much. Was it Tootsie? No, it wasn't actually. It was E.T., the extraterrestrial. E.T., of course. It just killed everything else. So it was number 1. Raiders, number 2, still making money from the year before. Rocky 3 was number 3. On Golden Pond, and An Officer and a Gentleman rounded out the top 5. Followed up at number 6 by Porky's. Number 7 was Arthur. Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, clocked in at number 8. Poltergeist 9, and number 10, rounding out the top 10, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. So pretty good year, and as I look further down the list, one of my all-time favorites from that year, Young Doctors in Love, mentioned that one a couple times. It finished in 23rd place, $30 million. It finished higher at the box office, Young Doctors in Love, that is, finished higher at the box office than Blade Runner, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Night Shift. It finished ahead of Zapped, too, another personal favorite of mine. 1982 was a pretty good year for movies. Yeah, no kidding. 48 Hours finished in 37th place that year, just because it came out late, right? So, like I say, you were mentioning, it was like one of the first sort of cop buddy movies. But yeah, you're right. Like Eddie Murphy wasn't a cop. He was working with the cops. He was like an informant,
Yeah, exactly.
And but he was one of the biggest box office draws of all time, certainly in the 80s. And when you think of Eddie Murphy, you think of comedy. But like I say, this was his feature film debut, but it was not a comedy. So that's the key thing to remember, I think, going into this. It's even more than an action movie. I think it's more like a character piece at times. I think it works well, but it's all because of the chemistry between those two.
Absolutely. And I think, again, that sort of goes back to what I was saying. Like, I would firmly put this in the category of capital D drama.
Yeah, so I agree. So I want to talk about some other actors that almost got cast. We always like to mention that. So when they were working on the script, of all things, they actually had Clint Eastwood in mind to do this movie. And they wanted him for the criminal part, believe it or not. And then they were reworking the script and stuff. And they're like, Eastwood might work better as the cop. And it would be really good if they brought in a black actor to play the criminal. So they were thinking Richard Pryor would be really, really good. So others that were considered for it, Gregory Hines was considered for Eddie Murphy's part. But he actually was really close to getting it, but he dropped out to do Cotton Club. And Richard Pryor, like I mentioned, and Denzel Washington was kind of a newcomer on the scene. They considered him. And it wasn't until Walter Hill's girlfriend suggested Eddie Murphy, who was this breakout star on Saturday Night Live. And then they started to kind of piece together the casting, For the other role, though, that Nick Nolte got, Burt Reynolds was considered, and so was Mickey Rourke and Sylvester Stallone.
Wow.
Interesting, eh? But no question. I think the casting is one of the best parts of this film. Those two just worked amazing together.
Definitely. It's hard. Some movies you can sort of go, oh, I could see this person playing it and that person playing it. This one, no. I think if you change either of these two guys, the movie's not going to be the same.
So let's get into the cast a little bit. We'll start with Nick Nolte, because he was hot off the success. He had this mini series back in the late 70s, Rich Man, Poor Man. And he made some movies like North Dallas 40 and The Deep and stuff like that. But he is absolutely perfectly cast, I think, here, because you need a cop that's got like a hard edge, and he does. At times, his performance comes off like it's almost like it's improvised, which I think was what happened here. Walter Hill probably got them. Like Eddie Murphy, no problem. He could probably improvise a whole entire film. But Nick Nolte doesn't strike me as someone who would improvise a lot. But he came off really well in this role. I think it was one of his all-time best roles. Are you a fan of any of his other work, too?
No, I'm not a big fan. I don't know. In my mind, I always just, sort of imagine him as like, a belligerent drunk. And I think that's just because he played a lot of characters like that as I was growing up. But I don't particularly think he's attractive. I don't think that he's... he's clearly talented. He's been in so many movies, and it's like that thing where people say, well, I hate that performer because the character they played was such a dick. And it's like, yeah, but that's called acting. And so I think sort of looking back, I probably unfairly judged him. He's probably a way better actor than I believe he is, because I just believe that he is these characters he plays. Long way around, not a big fan.
He was pretty critically acclaimed, though. I mean, he was nominated for a Best Actor Oscar in 1991 for Prince of Tides. He was up against Robert De Niro for Cape Fear, Warren Beatty for Bugsy, Robin Williams for The Fisher King, and they all lost out to Anthony Hopkins for Silence of the Lambs. Obviously.
Never heard of that guy.
Yeah, he was good. He was all on
a little indie movie that he was in.
Exactly. Nick Nolte was also nominated for Best Actor in 98 for Affliction. He lost out to Roberto Benigni for Life is Beautiful. And also nominated that year was Tom Hanks for Saving Private Ryan. He was pretty good in that too. And Nick Nolte was also nominated in 2011 for Best Supporting Actor for a movie called Warrior. Don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
He lost out to Christopher Plummer for Beginners, so not really sure. But so Nick Nolte's been pretty critically acclaimed over the years. Although, like you said, you think of him more as like a sort of belligerent drunk, but that's what he was in this film. So maybe that was it. So Eddie Murphy Where do we start with Eddie Murphy? My God. As a young guy, he listened to Richard Pryor's comedy album, and he was just hooked, right? So, and the thing was, too, he also idolized Peter Sellers, of all people. Probably because Peter Sellers was so good at playing all these different sort of diverse characters. And that kind of, sort of fed into Eddie Murphy's strength, because he started out as a writer on Saturday Night Live in 1980. And one night they needed somebody to do a quick fill-in on air. So he did. The audience just loved him, right? So he started appearing more and more on camera, and then he became the breakout star. I think it's fair to say, in those years, Lorne Michaels left the show, by the way, in 1980 to 1985. He went away. SNL should have probably died off if it wasn't for Eddie Murphy. He saved it. I think single-handedly saved the show.
Yep.
Although it's also easy to forget just how big Joe Piscopo was at the time.
Yeah, you look back and that's one where you sort of scratch your head and go, really? But
audiences loved Joe Piscopo back then. But so think about Eddie Murphy's first 3 movies. 48 Hours, Trading Places, and Beverly Hills Cop. Not too shabby.
That's a pretty good 1, 2, 3, man. You'd be hard pressed to find someone whose first 3 are that good, that popular, that successful, that well remembered and respected. Like, that's a murderer's row right there. So
those 3 movies basically made him one of the biggest box office stars of the 80s. Although he stumbled quite a bit after those 3. Like, Coming to America was good. Beverly Hills Cop, that was good too. But The Golden Child, Boomerang, Harlem Nights, like there was a lot of duds in there too, don't you think?
Didn't he do one with Dudley Moore called Best Defense?
He did. It came out in 84 as well. Not good. It really wasn't until The Nutty Professor that he had sort of a bit of a comeback, And then right when he was sort of kind of reinventing himself with audiences, like in movies like Shrek and Dr. Dolittle and stuff like that, he goes and gets arrested with a transgender prostitute. Remember, he was just giving her a ride home? Yeah, right. Pull this leg and it plays Jingle Bells. I mean, come on. But he survived that whole mess, and then he ended up getting nominated for an Oscar for Showgirls. And, man, that guy has had quite the ride over the years when you look back, right? But I think it's probably safe to say I would say he's in the top 5 stand-up comics of all time. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Man, when he released Delirious in 83, it was huge. It was a massive hit. He became a superstar like overnight. And his stand-up was so good. Man.
Yeah, but I went back and tried to watch that recently, like in the last year or two. Oh my God, does it not stand up? It is so offensive. It was offensive at the time, but I mean, just some of the things he says, you look back at it with today's lens and you're just like, that is just awful.
It was definitely of its time.
It was absolutely of its time. And at the time, I remember it being like edgy, and people were like, "Oh, can you say these things?" And I mean, and that was part of how stand-up comedies always work, right? You push the envelope, and he would say things that no one else would say, and he had the timing and the way to present the jokes, and that's all well and good. And I can remember as a younger person watching these things on video and laughing my butt off, even if I didn't necessarily understand all the jokes. But, I went back to try and watch it, and just some of the things you're like, oh boy, like I remember laughing at that years ago, and man, oh man, is that not funny today?
And then he came out with Eddie Murphy Raw in 1987. It wasn't as big as Delirious, but it's still one of my all-time favorites.
It had some good ones in there. The whole thing where Bill Cosby calls him up for being too dirty, that still holds up really well.
Good. I remember when you and I did our top 5 list of stand-up comedy movies, that was on my list. I like Raw. I thought it was great. Eddie Murphy has had one hell of a career. No two ways about it. Okay, so I want to get to some other cast members here. Annette O'Toole. I want to mention her. She played Nick Nolte's girlfriend. I always thought she was such a uniquely beautiful actress. I always liked her. I mean, she was Lana Lang in Superman 3. I don't know if you remember.
Yep. She played Superman's mom in the Smallville TV series.
Yes, she did. And she did, back in the day, she did a few topless scenes. It was the 80s. In Cat People and in Cross My Heart, the one and only romantic comedy for Martin Short, by the way. And she went on to marry Michael McKean. Lenny from Laverne and Shirley. He's also in Young Doctors in Love, one of my favorites. And they are still married today. Over 25 years they've been together. And she's still working. She was in this series my wife was watching. It was called Virgin River. Because my wife was watching. I'm like, hey,
I've heard of it. Yeah.
I'm like, hey, that's Annette O'Toole. You know, that's pretty much my contribution to pop culture in my house right now. It's like pointing out old actors and stuff that my wife watches, all the new stuff. James Remar, I want to mention as well. So this was actually one where my wife was watching this movie with me, and she recognized him from something else. So she knew him from Sex and the City.
Yes.
He was like this on again, off again boyfriend for Kim Cattrall on that. Mm-hmm. I thought he was, going back and watching this, he was an amazing bad guy. Like, he just comes off like he's evil. You know, he's like this nothing to lose criminal. You know, he just pulls the whole thing off so well. He looks like an escaped convict. During production,
he really does.
I read he would go days without sleeping just to give him that maniacal look, and it worked. Oh man, he was great. So anyway, so I'm watching this movie, and I was like, man, I swear to God, I just saw him in something recently, and I was racking my brain, and I finally asked my wife, she couldn't remember, and I was looking up his IMDb, and for some reason I missed the credit. I was going through, I'm like, I can't figure this out. I've been racking my brain, and then it hit me. Have you ever seen the show Dexter?
No, not a single episode.
So
I'm aware of it. I've never watched it.
My wife and I started watching Dexter. She hated it, so we had to stop after 3 episodes. Too bad. I liked it. I thought it was great. But James Remar is in that. He plays Dexter's dad in the flashbacks. And like I said, I was looking through his IMDb. For whatever reason, I just missed it. But this guy, as I was going through his IMDb, he has done a lot over the years. This guy works like constantly. But I thought he was fantastic in this movie as Gans. You?
Yeah, no, and I same like you. I've seen him in so many things. He pops in, like he does a lot of TV, but just the way he's got this very gruff voice that is unusual, but in a good way. So it's very distinct, and yeah, he always just looks like someone who just takes everything so seriously. So when he plays like a military guy or a criminal, you're like, okay, this guy's bad news. We're not going to mess with him. Like he just has that aura about him when you see him on the screen. So
he's almost like the definition of a character actor.
Yeah,
he really, really is. Like he just has that sort of roll down pat, and he's not like a leading man kind of guy. I also want to mention David Patrick Kelly, because he was in Walter Hill's other movie, The Warriors. He was the gang member in that movie who sits in the front seat of the car with the glass bottles on his fingers. You remember? And he was like, "Warriors, come out and play," which he improvised when they did that. And he was in Commando. He was Sully, the guy that Schwarzenegger hangs over the cliff by his leg. Remember? And he's like, "Wait, you said you'd kill me first." And then Schwarzenegger's like, "I lied." Just drops him. He was in that.
I always remember him. He was in the movie The Crow. He's one of the guys that he comes back to kill.
You just mentioned that one the other week too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Denise Crosby. I don't know if you recognized her. So she was the roommate of Billy Barrow's girlfriend. Remember, she hits Eddie Murphy with a baseball bat? She was in Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yep.
I never watched it. I know you were a big fan of that. She was Lieutenant Tasha Yar. I never watched it.
Yeah, she was killed in the first season, and they found a way to bring her back in later episodes.
Jonathan Banks, I think we need to give a shout out to, because he was also in Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy. He was the goon for Victor Maitland in that one. Remember, he calls him Cuz. And probably best known to most people from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Yeah, of course.
You know, Mike Ehrmantraut. But he was good in this one because in back in the 80s, he always played like, and also in Breaking Bad, he always played these kind of bad guys. Mm-hmm. But in this one, he was a cop. He was like a good cop that got shot, right? And I also want to give a shout out to Sonny Landham. So he was Billy Bear, because he was also in Bronco Billy, which came out in 1980, which was a movie that I liked with Clint Eastwood. And he was also in Predator. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he was pretty good. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the trivia and behind the scenes stuff in this movie. So Eddie Murphy was fantastic, as we said. He almost got fired from this movie. The studio execs were looking at the dailies and they didn't think he was being funny enough. So they're like, I think we got to fire this guy. And meanwhile, like you and I said, this is not a comedy. It's like a gritty drama that I think Walter Hill was going for. So I don't think the studio execs really kind of got that, you know? And Eddie Murphy was nominated for a Golden Globe for this movie. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, Best New Star for 1983. Well, 1982.
I imagine he lost out to somebody who we're going to go, who?
He actually lost out to Ben Kingsley for Gandhi. It's like, kind of get it, I guess. But of course, it was 1982. So Ben Kingsley, a white English actor playing, an Indian Gandhi, crazy. But it was the 80s, I guess. What do you want? And then, another thing I should mention, Nick Nolte was going to host Saturday Night Live after this movie came out. But he got sick. So Eddie Murphy subbed in for him, even though he was a cast member. So he became the first and only current cast member to host the show. So that was kind of a neat thing.
It's impressive.
Yeah. You want to talk about some scenes from the movie that stood out? Yeah. I got a few.
You know what? I mean, there's the scene where he gets him out of prison.
Yes. Let's start with that one. Where he's singing Roxanne.
Right, where he's singing Roxanne.
So
and
good.
I mean, every time I hear the song Roxanne, that's immediately what I think of. And
he dominates the scene before you ever see him on screen.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
I think it really sets the tone, and that he's like, I'm here and I'm going to be just as big a part of this movie. And so that scene always stands out to me, for sure. Hit a few of yours. I'm sure we probably all go, oh yeah, that one.
I got lots. So when Gans and Billy Bear, when he breaks him out of prison and he kills the guy on the bench, it was one of his old gang members. Mm-hmm. He calls the pimp to order 2 prostitutes for him and Billy. And he's on the phone. He's like, okay, for me, I want a blonde. I want a real thin. And then for my friend, I want an Indian. He's like, no, not with a turban, a squaw. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, that really set me back. I was like, wow. So that one kind of jumped out to me. But the bar scene, I think we need to talk about. Is like the best scene of the film, right?
Definitely one of the iconic scenes of this film, yeah.
That scene, I think you could argue, single-handedly made Murphy a superstar. Like his confidence and his ability to just fill up the screen. But the thing was, he filled the screen, but he didn't just chew up the scenery. Like he proved he could carry a movie. And we also got to mention the bartender, because that was Peter Jason. We just watched him in Brewster's Millions. Remember Chuck Fleming from Action News?
From Action News, yeah.
Oh, the bar scene is so good. Eddie Murphy's ability to go into a redneck country bar and not just convince him he's a cop, but just take over the whole room, that was something else to watch. Oh my gosh. I loved when they're going in. He was talking to Nick Nolte. He goes, you said an experience is all it takes, right? And Nick Nolte's like, yeah. He's like, come in and experience some of my I just love the way they set it up. And then when he's in the bar and he says to the redneck, he's like, he gets all this money out of his pocket. He's like, man, you're loaded. What's all this? The guy's like, it's a tax refund. He's like, you're too stupid to have a job. Again, he just like dominates the scene. Another scene that stood out to me as being, if the bar scene is 1A, this is 1B, when they fight in the alley. Oh my God. I love that scene. So they decide they're going to duke it out. And I love how the way the scene is done, they don't actually let one or the other actually win.
Yeah, I noticed that. They
kind of like a draw.
Do a thorough job of just beating the crap out of each other, and there isn't a clear winner.
So I love it. At the end, Nick Nolte just turns and just slugs him in the jaw.
Cheap shot right at the end.
So apparently someone on the internet took the time to actually count the exact number of punches that each one got in during the fight, and Murphy was one up on Nolte until the end when Nick Nolte gets even with that one.
Oh, jeez.
I thought it was good. Another thing I thought was pretty funny was when Eddie Murphy wants sex. And he's like, he's been in jail so long, and he goes, and I quote, my gets hard when the wind blows, which I thought was pretty funny. And how he refers to sex as trim.
Yeah, that made me laugh. I was like, wow, that's a very 80s colloquialism.
Because he's talking to the girl in the bar, and he's like, I don't know, I need to get some trim. And she's like, you can't ask me any better than that, which I thought was funny. And then after they do the deed, and he comes back, and Nick Nolte's like, okay, how was it? And he's like, I should get my bronzed. That was so funny, you know. Oh, I also want to mention when they were in that scene, that whole nightclub scene near the end, the band that's playing is called the Bus Boys.
Yeah.
And the song that they're playing is The Boys Are Back in Town. Not to be confused with the Thin Lizzy version. Totally different song. But the Bus Boys song is really good. It's like really catchy, great vocals too. I thought that song was good. Yep. So I think that they must have been friends with Eddie Murphy, because if you go back and watch the beginning of Delirious, he comes out on stage and he says, I want to thank the Bus Boys. So they obviously opened up for his act, because out of context, you could watch Delirious and think, why is he thanking the Bus Boys? Are they the ones that serve the tables or something?
Yeah, no, during the opening credits, the song is playing. And then, I can't remember if they actually show the band performing, but
they don't.
Yeah, I seem to recall that when he did that tour, they were there. Like, he had the musicians open up for him. So I do believe there was a friendship there, or a friendship that developed there. So yeah. Another and then scene, didn't they? Didn't the Bus Boys? I may be wrong, but didn't they have a song on one of the Ghostbusters soundtracks? Or am I imagining that?
Ooh, I don't know. That might have been Ghostbusters 2.
I may be misremembering that. Anyway, I'll look it up. You keep going.
I also like the scene near the end when Gans has Eddie Murphy at gunpoint, and Eddie Murphy's like, he says to Nick Nolte, shoot him. So he does, just narrowly missing Eddie Murphy, and Gans falls dead, and Murphy's like, what the hell? I was bluffing, man. I thought that was pretty funny. That was a good scene. I want to talk a little bit about the way that this film handles race relations. I think it's important that there's a white cop and a black criminal, and the way that they interact, and the way it's done. Like, other than maybe in The Heat of the Night that I mentioned earlier, you don't get this kind of on-screen interaction between a black and white actor talking about race. Not in 1982.
No, not usually.
So, and I love how Nick Nolte, he's not sure how to use the term brother. Remember, like there's just, it's so well done. I feel like that's what made it kind of groundbreaking at the time. And like Lethal Weapon kind of builds on it some more too. And like we said, there's no way you'd get Lethal Weapon without this film. But I thought it was interesting the way that they handled the race relations. Do you think it was like a big part of the film, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would assume that there would be a certain amount of racism within the characters, and they would use certain terms and colloquialisms in a way that was, not pleasant and not appropriate. But that it really wasn't done in a way that was over the top or that it seemed gratuitous. And I think that they handled it in a way that, like you said, when he makes the phone call to order the prostitutes, like, that character's going to say what he's going to say, and that helps define that character. Whereas, I don't recall Nick Nolte's character using any derogatory terms when referring to Eddie Murphy in the course of the film. And I'm sure that was a deliberate choice because, given that he's a white cop in 1982, he probably has said some things. But, it was clearly a choice by the people who wrote the movie and directed the movie and performed the movie that this is how they felt they wanted to do it. And I think it worked. I don't think it didn't feel forced. Like sometimes you have it one way or the other where certain words are thrown in there and you sort of go, well, that was in there just for like shock value. Or other times you're like, come on, they clearly would have said X, Y, Z, and you only didn't say it because you're making the movie today, and that's not how we talk today. But I never got the sense that there was that self-censorship during the course of the film.
Eddie Murphy drops the N-word in the bar scene when he's like talking to the rednecks in there about
he's talking about himself.
Exactly. He's like, I'm your worst nightmare, which I thought was really, really well done. And speaking of that, we always like to look at some quotes from these movies. I got a couple that stood out to me. The one that I always associate with this film is we ain't brothers, we ain't partners, and we ain't friends. I don't know why.
That's a good one.
Always stood out to me. And because they repeat it to each other. But also, when they were going to go do the stakeout and they're waiting for Luther to go to pick up the money, and Eddie Murphy's like, Jack, tell me a story to try and fall asleep. and Nick Nolte's like, you. Oh, that's one of my favorites. I thought that was pretty funny. And also, when Eddie Murphy's asking, he's trying to he knows nothing about his personal life, about Nick Nolte's personal life. And he's like, you got lady? And he's like, yeah. You know, the generosity of women never ceases to amaze me, which I thought was just fantastic. Again, did he improvise that line? Probably, but it really speaks to just the way he sees Nick, the way that we see Nick Nolte's character too as an audience. So overall, yeah, I thought there were some great quotes in there. The director, probably not much to say about Walter Hill. We mentioned him in our last movie review.
Yeah.
So when you get him, I want to talk a bit about the actors' paydays for this movie. So Eddie Murphy was paid $450,000 for his role. Nick Nolte, $1 million.
Which at the time was probably in line.
He makes sense.
Like he came in. He was a proven commodity. It was a Nick Nolte movie.
Yep, we set it all up at the beginning. Nick Nolte was a known commodity, but things changed when the sequel rolled around. Let me tell you. So Nick Nolte for another 48 hours was paid $3 million. Eddie Murphy, $7 million.
There you go. That's
things got corrected there.
Yeah.
And speaking of the sequel, another 48 hours from 1990. Have you ever seen it?
I think I saw it once. You know what I think I did? When I worked at Blockbuster, I rented 48 hours and another 48 hours. I think I watched them back to back, either on the same day or one day after the other. And that was the one and only time I ever saw it. And again, I remember not enjoying it, so I've never had a reason to go back to it.
I have never seen it. No desire to see it. I like the original a lot. Sequels, you know, as we've talked about, they're never as good as the original. So I'm like, I usually stay away from them for the most part. So yeah, this was one I never watched. But it came out, like I say, in 1990. It made $80 million. Had a budget of $50 million.
Again,
$10 million were the salaries that we just talked about, the 2 stars. So
yeah, but I mean, at that point, Eddie Murphy was really popping, right?
Mm-hmm,
like he, as we talked about, he had so many hits up until then. You put his name on a marquee, people are going to see it. So I think that was probably a fair payday for the performers, and the amount of money it made was probably about what they expected.
There was talk about making a 3rd installment too. They actually proposed a title for it, Yet Another 48 Hours, but it never got made. Probably a damn good thing too. I don't think it would be very good. That's my thought, but
yeah, that sounds about right. Oh, by the way, just a show note here. I looked up the Bus Boys. They did have a song on the original Ghostbusters soundtrack. The song is "Cleaning Up the Town," which was played during the montage when the Ghostbusters were getting popular.
Yes, very cool. Oh, that's great. That's good to know.
There you go.
So overall, you said, I just want to bring this full circle, because you said at the beginning you'd only seen the movie once in the late 90s and stuff. You didn't have a great memory of it. You'd watch it, since then, so. Now you've seen it again this week. What are your thoughts on it? And give it a rating for me out of 10. Like, where are you at with this film? Now that you understand like kind of where it kind of fits into things as a groundbreaking film and, starting this whole genre. What do you think? Give it a rating.
Well, I think sort of my initial impression still holds. I'd give this a 6. I definitely wouldn't go higher than that, but I think it's a solid 6.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I think it's an 8. I think it is groundbreaking. I think it's... this made Eddie Murphy a star. There's so many things about this movie. The fact that it's not a full-out comedy, it's more of a drama. There's so many things to like about it. I think it's just great. And it hits all the notes for me, too, when I'm watching it. Like, it's very well done, especially considering Walter Hill had a pretty limited career as a director. I thought it was really good. So I'm going to go ahead of you, and I'm going to give it an 8. So that's my thoughts.
All right. Well, that's fair. I mean, we don't have to agree on absolutely everything.
No, and we never do. So we don't always. We sometimes do. But anyway, on that note, what do you say we have some
fun with Caveman?
All right, my man. This was my movie, so it's over to you. So what do you have for us this week?
So I struggled a little bit with putting the trivia together. Sure. So I thought, well, Eddie Murphy trivia is probably going to be way too easy because I know you know a lot about him. Mm-hmm. We've already done trivia where we had movies with the time in the title. We've already done movies with numbers in the title.
Gotcha.
I think we've even done movie trivia about buddy cops and pairs, like that kind of thing. So I was like, oh my God, where are we going with this? So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to be old school. I'm just going to give you a whole bunch of trivia questions about Nick Nolte. And then, of course, you stepped all over this during the show.
Sorry.
So
I used to do that with Yancey all the time.
Oh my God! I had a lot of Yancey flashbacks as I was listening to the show tonight. Okay, sorry. I mean, I'll hit you with the questions, and we'll just talk through the ones that we obviously know the answers to. So my first question was, has Nick Nolte ever been nominated for an Oscar? If so, how many? And you already mentioned that. Yes, he has. He's been nominated for how many, Chris?
He's been nominated for 3, right?
Yes, you got that correct.
There we go. Okay.
And then I was going to ask you what were the movies, which you already named.
Yep. Okay.
And
yep.
so we don't have to go through those again. And then I was going to ask you if you could name at least one other person that he was nominated against in those years, possibly the winner. And again, you did that for all of
already.
those.
Sorry.
So we stepped all over all of that.
Sorry.
So, but for anyone who maybe just skipped ahead to the trivia, I'll give you the answers. He was nominated for 3 Oscars. He was nominated for Prince of Tides in the Best Leading Actor role in 1992. He was nominated for Best Lead Role Actor in a movie called Affliction in 1999. Is that right?
That sounds right. No, it was 98. 98. 99 was when the Oscars were held, but it was for films in 98.
There you go.
Yeah.
And in 2012, he was a nominee for Best Supporting Actor in a movie called Warrior, which honestly, I don't even remember.
That was the same year that Jonah Hill was nominated for Moneyball.
Yes, that was, and there you go. That's one of the other people that was nominated. But you already mentioned Christopher Plummer, who was the one that he
won for The Beginners.
That he won, yeah. And I do remember Affliction in the late '90s when it came out. I was still working at Blockbuster, and it was a big renter. People seemed to really enjoy it, but honestly, I don't remember ever watching it myself. All right, then you already answered this one too. I was going to say he was nominated for 1 Primetime Emmy in 1976 for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Limited Series. Can you name the limited series? I know you can. Go ahead. Tell us again.
It was Rich Man, Poor Man.
Yes, it was. There you go. He was nominated. He was up against 8. There were eight nominees in that category. Can you name any of the other nominees in that category? And I'll give you a hint. There was another person for Rich Man, Poor Man in there.
And that was from
76.
1976. So it wouldn't have been. It was Best Support or Best Leading Actor.
Lead Actor in a Limited Series.
Was Roots then, or was Roots after that? Roots came after 1976 limited series. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I never heard of any of these things.
I got buzzed.
It was Edward. I'll give you the names of the performers because you're going to know a lot of them. Edward Herrman.
Oh yeah, Edward Herrman. I know him.
William Devane. Also from Rich Man, Poor Man was Peter Strauss.
Okay.
Hal Holbrook ended up winning.
What was Hal Holbrook's limited series he was in?
Sandberg's Lincoln.
Jeez, never even heard of it.
No, I never heard of it. Someone named George Gizzard, or Gizzard, I guess. And then you have 2 no-names, never heard of them before. Johnny Come Lately called Jack Lemmon, and another nobody named Anthony Hopkins.
Who are they? Yeah.
I hope those guys had good careers because they didn't win that year either.
Right.
All right. Now we'll move to some trivia that you didn't actually step on.
Oh, finally.
Can you tell me, what is Nick Nolte's connection to the Star Wars universe?
Oh, he was in The Mandalorian.
Yes.
The only reason I know that is because, my son wanted to watch it. I was like, me, I don't watch anything after the original trilogy. And my son wanted to watch this, and I was like, that guy, it was like this little short guy. And I'm like, yeah, that guy's voice. I know that voice from somewhere. Where is it? And I just kept watching it with my son. It was one of the first episodes, I think.
I was just about to say, he was in the pilot episode, season 1. He appeared in 3 episodes, episode 1, episode 2, and episode 7.
Oh, there you go. And he was in, and I was like, who is, and I was like, that's Nick Nolte. Yes. So I finally
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me Nick Nolte's connection to Marvel, the Marvel universe?
Ooh, this is a little bit more in your area, so I don't think I could do that. No, I couldn't do that. What is it?
Okay, and this is sort of a trick question. In 2003, the movie Hulk came out, directed by Ang Lee, which was not officially part of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I remember that. I never saw it.
Nick Nolte played the father of the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner's father.
Wasn't Jennifer Connelly in that?
Yes, she was.
Yeah, I always liked her. She's awesome.
All right. Here's one. I think this is kind of easy, but let me get through the whole question.
Sure.
So Nick Nolte played a character named Four Leaf Tayback in a 2008 comedy ensemble that starred Ben Stiller, Jack Black, Robert Downey Jr., Jay Baruchel, Danny McBride, Bill Hader, Matthew McConaughey, and Tom Cruise. Do you know which movie this was?
Yeah, I saw that one. That was Tropic Thunder, wasn't it? Yeah. I like that movie. Oh my God, Robert Downey Jr. in that movie is just friggin' brilliant. The whole movie was just good.
We'll have to go back and watch this one again sometime real soon. But yeah, I forgot he was in this, and then I was like, oh yeah, he's the guy who has no hands that wrote the book that they're making the movie about. And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I only ever saw that once when it came out, but I remember I thought it was quite good. And we have to go back and watch it again. I agree with you. I'd like to go back and revisit that because I feel like it could also be problematic. So,
yeah, probably. Okay. So as you mentioned, Nick Nolte was a pretty big deal in the early 80s. And it turns out that he was actually in the running for a lot of really big movies and just missed out by a hair, or in some cases was offered the part and turned it down for various reasons.
Okay.
He and Kurt Russell crossed paths a few times. There's 3 big Kurt Russell movies that were offered to Nick Nolte that he just either didn't take or dropped out of shooting. Can you name 2 of them?
I will say Big Trouble in Little China.
No.
Oh, what else did Kurt Russell do in the 80s? It was big. I'm drawing a blank. I don't know. What else?
Escape from New York.
Oh,
The Thing in 1982.
Okay.
And Tequila Sunrise in 1988.
Oh, Tequila Sunrise. I'm not really familiar with that one. So.
All right. This one's a lot easier.
Yep.
So he also crossed paths with Harrison Ford. 4 movies that Harrison Ford did.
Ooh, interesting.
And I'm talking big movies that Harrison Ford did that were either offered to Nick Nolte or that Nick Nolte was like right up there until the end.
2 of them. I'm gonna think Witness was one of them.
No.
Oh, just that whole cop thing. I would have thought. I don't think I ever remember in the lore that he was ever considered for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, he was.
I know Raiders was more like Tom Selleck and oh man.
Well, can you give me another one?
What else? Blade Runner, I will say.
Yes.
Wow. What else?
Apparently, he was also shortlisted as Han Solo in the original Star Wars.
What?
And then in
Really?
1993, they wanted him in the movie The Fugitive, and for whatever reason, he couldn't do it. He had some other commitment, or he felt he was too old for the part.
I could possibly see him in that role. I could possibly see him in that role for Fugitive.
Well, apparently the director really wanted Nick Nolte, and
I get it. I can see where he was at with that. Yeah. I get it. Okay.
All right. What legendary 70s sports movie did Nick Nolte lobby hard for, but ultimately lost out on?
70s sports movie. Was it The Longest Yard?
It was not. Do you want to take a second guess?
Well, he was in North Dallas 40. What else? What other legendary 70s sports movie? I know. I'm going to say The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh.
No.
Didn't think it was that one.
No. I'll give you a hint.
Give me a hint.
He didn't have enough time to learn how to skate.
Oh, was it Slapshot?
Yes.
Yeah, I could kind of see where the director and producers would think of casting him, but man, they got it wrong because that was one of the best performances, I think, of Paul Newman's career.
It wasn't the Paul Newman part. It was the part of the pretty boy, Ned Braden.
What? The pretty boy?
How do you say this? Ontkeen? Michael Ontkeen?
Yes, Michael Ontkeen.
That's the part that he wanted.
Although the thing is, I think you got to go back in time because I want to say
1977. So the movie would have been shot in 76. So he would have been a lot skinnier.
Yep. And the other thing too is I remember back then people used to do Sexiest Man of the Year. Nick Nolte was once considered Sexiest Man Alive.
All right. Well, you just stepped over the next question.
Oh, sorry.
In what year was Nick Nolte People's Sexiest Man Alive?
Oh, so when was it? It couldn't have been. I think it was after this. So I'm going to go with like 1985.
That's not correct.
Oh,
it was later than that. Pick again.
So I'll go as high as like 87.
Nope.
I don't know. I'm just
1992.
92. I guess with Prince of Tides, right? Like,
it must have been. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right.
Oh my God.
So he was the sexiest man alive in 92. But there's that famous.
So just think about that for a second. Think about Nick Nolte in this movie. What a dirtbag he is.
Yeah.
Add 10 years to him and he's the sexiest man alive.
Yeah.
Go figure.
So
because again, looking back at this movie, he is like the antithesis of a sexy man. The way he treats his girlfriend and everything. I can't believe it.
Exactly.
Anyway.
All right. So 1992, he's the sexiest man alive. Yep. And then 10 years later in 2002, he gets arrested. And there's that famous mugshot of him with the crazy hair.
With the hair sticking out everywhere.
Yeah. Oh, crap. I stepped on the answer here. I was going to ask you, what year was that? Damn.
It was.
Were you paying attention?
No. Was it 93?
No, it was 10 years later. 2002.
Oh, it was 2002. I don't know.
I stepped on the answer. Wow. Yeah. You think I just got arrested for drunk driving? Holy cow!
Oh man, and I wasn't even listening. I don't know. I remember that. I was thinking more of like when you went there. I just kind of went to a place where I was thinking with that hair sticking out everywhere, and I don't remember what it was he got arrested for, drunk driving or something, right?
It was on suspicion of drunk driving, and it turns out that it wasn't that. He was on something else. I was reading into it, but in any case, as soon as I was like, oh, mugshot, oh my god, I remember that. Yeah.
Well, at least he didn't get pulled over driving a trans prostitute home. That was Eddie Murphy. So
no.
Was that.
Which in today's day and age, who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Like, now, like, who gives a crap? Back then, that was like career, killing. But no
kidding.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Anyway, no, you did pretty good. I mean, obviously, you had done some homework, so you knew a lot of those answers, and you brought them up during the show. But no, all good.
Okay, so that was my film. So now it is over to you to pick a film for us to watch next time out. What are you thinking there, my friend? It should have come out after 1989 because that's.
I was going to say I kind of want to do Tropic Thunder, but I think we need to wait for that one. So you know what? But I do want to do a comedy. So I'm going to pick a comedy from the late 90s, and we're going to go with Matt Parker and Trey Stone's classic Team America: World Police.
Oh, very cool. When you mentioned them, I thought maybe you're going to go with South Park Bigger, Longer, Uncut or something. So that's great.
We've done that one or not, but.
I don't
Team
know.
America. I know we definitely haven't done that one yet.
No, we definitely haven't done that one. I have mentioned it before on the podcast. Oh, I'm looking forward to going back and watching this. I don't know if my wife will watch it with me. I guess we'll have to wait.
I'm guessing the over and under is 10 minutes before she gets up and leaves, and I'm definitely taking the under on that one.
She's like, what are you making me watch? Yep. So that's likely going to happen. So we'll watch Team America: World Police. That was from 2004. And
really?
If I remember correctly,
I thought it was from the 90s. Okay.
No, if I remember it was correctly, it was from 2004. I could be wrong. So until then, I'm Chris McBrien. You're Derek Myers, and we're both saying thanks a lot for taking time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.